I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to bring Tom Catalini up front and center. Welcome, Tom, coming in from Cleveland, Ohio. So Tom, go ahead and if you would, let's get us started with just your insights on what is digital transformation and where does somebody even begin to think about a digital transformation for themselves? How did you get started on the road to leveraging digital technologies as a way to enhance your personal leadership and personal presence?
Hi, Kim. It's great to talk to you. I'll get a little echo back. Turn my volume down. So it's great to talk to you all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm out here at a museums and technology conference. So definitely a lot of talk about digital transformation in this crowd. And it's interesting to see people coming at it from all different angles, and they're at all different stages. Some are sort of just trying to figure out where to get started, and some are much more mature and doing some really interesting and fascinating things. There's a lot of stuff going on with VR and augmented reality. Cleveland Museum of Arts, which I had a chance to visit the other day, has gone screenless on some of the technology interfaces. So it's, using your whole body and using the Microsoft Kinect technology. MoMA did a quick demo yesterday of something where they hacked an Alexa to try and start to experiment with voice technology. So digital transformation is everywhere. It's the hot new thing. But in many ways, right, those of us in this group, this is the new name for the thing we've been doing for our entire career. So, when you ask me about digital transformation, it is, to me, in many ways, it's kind of like just the natural evolution of where we're at. It's the new name for the same old thing. Those of us in the tech space and technology and IT in any way, everything's been digital since we got started. So digital is, we're sort of digital natives in that way, not to stretch that one too far. You talk about transformation, just another word for change. We've been helping people and organizations change for years and decades around these sorts of things. So I guess, when you ask me about that, one thing I just want everybody in this group should feel pretty comfortable in this domain, actually, right? We know digital technology better than anybody. We know how all the stuff works behind the scenes. Many folks don't know that, don't appreciate that. That's lost on them. And we've been helping people and organizations through change for all these years. And we have, over the course, the folks I know in the industry, are the ones, they have this broad perspective on what's happening in the organization from one end to the other, what all the department's concerns are. And so we have a unique vantage point into this thing. At the same time, we definitely have a lot to learn, right? Because we rarely find ourselves on the other side of the fence, on the parts that are customer facing, or that are really on sort of leveraging these technologies in the outward way that they are these days. So I want us to feel comfortable, but also that we have a lot to learn. And the way I got started, you asked me about that, was simply this, social media, digital technology, whatever you want to call it, was simply like the latest thing. So I'm always interested in what's the new emerging platform out there, right? And so it was on like a Motorola flip phone that I first started using Twitter just to check it out and see what it's like. Because those of us in this space, we know how valuable it is to have hands-on, firsthand experience, play around with this stuff and figure out how it works. We can be, some of us, a little bit reticent because it's kind of public facing. So I think that's part of what we should talk about today is what's that journey like to take, from like a technology specialist and really knowing how things work under the hood to being a little bit more open and public about that. And, I made that journey very, very slowly over a long period of time. And that's definitely what I recommend for folks. I'd love to hear from folks on the call, kind of their specific questions, where they're at and what they're up against these days. And I'd be happy to address any of that.
That's great. Well, while folks are thinking about that, Tom, let me ask you this. So you write and you blog a lot about personal leadership, right? And so when we think about somebody's, kind of personal leadership, how they just go forth in the world and lead themselves and lead others in the process and be an example to the world, how might the use of social media be a platform for somebody's personal leadership?
Great. So personal leadership to me is it's our ability to lead from within is one of the biggest factors in our success in our career. So as you get deep into this as a technologist, as a leader, and you're helping organizations through all of this, you start to uncover what are the elements, what's the secret sauce that makes somebody a good leader or makes you a better leader, helps you move forward in that realm. And it's really, at the end of the day, we can point to a lot of things in our circumstances, right? We all want opportunities and challenges from the outside to kind of draw us forward. But when I talk about personal leadership, it's really that ability within. How can we push ourselves forward a little bit more deliberately? So I think that first thing is kind of an awareness. And I think I became a little bit more aware of this through social media because it put me in a position of really feeling like, if I set up a blog, this is back in the day, and I start to create some content and some ideas and put them out there, well, what am I going to say? Who am I? Why would anybody want to listen to me? That whole sort of imposter syndrome that we all go through more often than we probably should, but we all do. And social media and digital technologies to me brought that to the forefront because all of a sudden, I'm not just working on the underpinnings. I have to deal with the actual content, and I've got to figure out who I am and what do I have to say. And I think that's an opportunity for growth for many of us, right? And I think the way I recommend to people to do that is just to start small. So we're now much deeper into this era. Mark Zuckerberg is well out of Harvard. He's got billions and billions of users. This is more common. It's more odd to not be on a social network or to be out and have a digital presence than it is to be on one. But I don't think that should intimidate us. And we want to sort of stick a toe in the water. We want to figure out how to set up our profiles. So in this group, right, in particular, maybe LinkedIn is an obvious one to talk about, where it's your professional network and you want to set up a profile, have a nice photo of yourself out there, figure out what to say in your summary and have that profile out there. But you will get so much more out of the experience by publishing content, creating content, sharing your ideas. It's a way that you can help kind of force yourself to go through what I went through, which is sort of figure out what that idea is, how you want to represent it, where you want to publish it, and put it out there and see what happens. And I know for me, when I first started down this path, I went very slowly and carefully, and I was afraid that when I publish my blog post or something on LinkedIn, I'm going to walk down the hall and everybody's going to look at me differently and confront me on that. Tom, that was a dumb idea. Why would you say that? And then what you find out is you finally put some stuff out there and you go, oh, how come nobody's paying attention to me? I have brilliant ideas and nobody's even looking. So it's helpful to go through that experience of going from trying to get yourself psyched up to go in there and then to find out that it can be a safe environment. And we definitely want to go in baby steps. And that's the way I approached it. That's what I recommend to most people. And it's a natural way. So that's another reason why I'm not so big into the buzzwords of digital transformation and we're going to change the whole world. Where it's all like boiling the ocean kind of stuff. When we know from our day-to-day experience how these things happen are small increments consistently over time, and I think that's the key.
Tom, while you were talking there, I actually remembered that a couple of webinars ago, I had a great guest on named Rachel Hoppe. And Rachel Hoppe, you might know, I think you've met Rachel as well. Rachel runs this organization called the Community Roundtable. And the Community Roundtable is all about helping organizations, leaders, and community managers in the organization create community and create engagement inside the organization so that the organization can be more effective. And in fact, they've been researching a lot of organizations that would say the more engaged employees are about what's going on and working together as an engaged network, really there's real benefits and real return on investment of having an engaged group of people. And she has a model that's actually, we talked about in that webinar, if anybody wants to go back and look at it, Rachel Hoppe, it was actually in December. She has a model called Working Out Loud. And it's really this kind of baby step model that you were talking about, which is to say, if you want to engage and get a group of people engaged, it's a natural process to make it an evolution. It just doesn't happen necessarily right on its own by itself. And so the work out loud model starts with people just putting their information out there, right? In terms of their profile, you know, like I'm online, right?
Yeah.
It's very static. It's not interactive. I'm connected in, I'm online. I have a picture. I have my static presence. And then while people are there, they start to like other things that people, you know, they like other people or they connect with other people, and they go through this liking process. And so liking something, it's not too scary. You're just kind of starting to show a little bit of yourself, a little bit about what you like. And then you go to the next stage, which is you're sharing, right? So you've gone from I'm here to, you know, passive, to I like what I see other people doing, to I'm sharing things that other people doing, you know, that I have to offer to this whole conversation. And it really gets people now more in the mode of being engaged. And if you're sharing, you're actually really sort of putting yourself out there, because as you say, you're taking your content, your ideas, your thoughts, and you're putting it forward for other people to like or not like, right? And you know, that can be, you know, a big step. It certainly is for me. I have gone through the same process that you've gone through, which is, you know, once you start publishing your content, it's like you're showing your homework to the world, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you kind of, if you're not getting the likes, you're starting to wonder, well, why doesn't anybody like my homework? You know? If you are getting the likes, then you're going, hey, people like what I'm writing, and you know, so it's very affirming.
Yes.
But it is a process that people go through of just.
So I love that model, and that's a great parallel to exactly what I'm talking about. And a couple ideas come to mind while you were talking about that. And that's what drew me into the whole social and digital space in the beginning, was the ability to connect around ideas. So look, we've got people from all across the country on this discussion right now who want to talk about this idea. How wildly different is that from going to a conference and whoever you're standing in line next to get a cup of coffee is who you meet, and you share some and exchange some information in a very sort of random and limited way, where now we're saying, hey, we're all interested in this idea. We want to gather around that, and there are no more barriers. We can all sort of get together on this format or any other format to do that. So that's what drew me in when you talk about those baby steps of just sort of getting a presence and liking some things. And it was amazing the people I have met over the internet, because we're brought together by interest in some kind of shared idea, you know, whether it's commenting on a blog or doing something like we're doing here. And then as you cross over further and you get drawn in, which is really what happened to me, into content creation, then you can start to maybe attract some of those people. And, you know, you're not going to worry too much about how popular you're going to be, right? So we want to be careful about the metrics that we're encouraging people to look for. But I want to talk about that internal experience of, you know, going from sort of feeling that imposter syndrome to, you know, it's not so bad. And you will ultimately go, well, how come no, you know, everybody isn't coming around looking at my ideas? But it's also, it's not a watershed moment. It's something to work on over time and very deliberately, and to build that up. It's the same way we would talk about how we would run an IT strategy or anything in this realm. That would be our contribution. But it's worth doing. I want to bring up one more point about when we get into creating content. Let's talk about writing, like whether it's setting up a WordPress blog, or LinkedIn has a Pulse platform that's phenomenal. A lot of people are contributing in. Let's talk about some of the benefits that go from the digital world back into real life, or, you know, our day-to-day lives, or how does it make us a better professional? Well, as I've blogged, and I've now on my main, I first started blogging about cycling, by the way. So that was like, you know, 10, 12 years ago, as a way to get started in the space. I should also point out, one of the baby steps could be for folks is to start in a way that's that you're more comfortable with. So if you brew beer at home, or if you're a cyclist, or you're interested in something else, it can be fun as technologists to get into the underpinnings, and how do we register a domain and set up a WordPress blog, and why do I want to self-host, and how does all that work, and how do I set up themes and modules? And so you can also draw yourself in if you're technically oriented to with some of those little bits of candy, because it's all good stuff that you can, you know, bring back to the office, and you'll have a better appreciation for how these things work. But once you start creating content, what I noticed over time, as I made an effort to do it consistently, is I developed better writing skills over time, which surprisingly to me, in a way, helped me develop better thinking skills, which helped me develop better in-person communication skills. Because now I'm gonna write a 500-word blog post, and I got sort of a kernel of an idea, and I'm putting it together, and I'm gonna put it out in the public. So I wanna think about it a little bit. I wanna work on it a little bit. I don't wanna overdo it, but at any minimal level, you've got to kind of process your thinking. What it was doing for me, I found, was helping crystallize my thoughts and my thinking on whatever it was. You know, personal leadership is what I've probably written the most about, but I was writing about social media and my experience with that in the beginning, leadership in general, technology, all different topics. And it was funny, as I kept sort of exercising this muscle over time, I was surprised to find how much I brought back to the office. And I'm kind of quoting my own writing in a meeting or something like that. I'm like, and I started to recognize, you know, geez, this is really helping me think through my own ideas in a way that's helpful. And then you can also find other people that are interested in the same sorts of things, and you can get their input and feedback. And you start to, pretty early on, you start to think much bigger than the context that you live in, much bigger than your organization, maybe bigger than your industry, depending on what it is you're thinking about and working on. And I found that very freeing. I wasn't limited to, geez, maybe my coworkers aren't into this, or my boss doesn't want to have a deep discussion on this, or even my industry conference or whatever. So really helping think bigger, crystallize your thoughts, bring them back in. And I think you really should push yourself to do that on a LinkedIn, on a blog, or something in a public forum. Again, start small. Let's not make it a big deal, but chip away at that over time. And there's something about putting yourself out there with your name on it in that kind of form. LinkedIn's a great place to start. That helps you kind of crystallize that, bring it back to the office. And then what you find is people know a lot more about what you're interested in, how you think, how you might approach things, what your sort of philosophy is. And that comes into play in a number of ways. Say you're trying to attract staff that you want to hire, or you know, the obvious one is, you know, looking for a new job or something like that. But more importantly, even attracting staff, having your colleagues get to know, like, and trust you more. The more, you know, rather than having a superficial conversation over a rubber chicken at a conference, they actually know on this topic, geez, I read your post on that. It was kind of an interesting take, things like that. And you can, you know, you can reciprocate and find out. And wouldn't you want to know more about what that person has to say, or is that's the person you're going to call up when you have a question on something? And I know that I eagerly read the stuff that my friends are publishing, and most of the time I'm just like, this is great. Like the person is, I'm so glad they're sharing their perspective, their insight. And you know, I didn't know, Kim, you knew so much about such and such, but it was cool to read your post.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I've had the same experience where people have literally come up to me that for whatever reason, I normally wouldn't have talked to. And they said, yeah, I've seen a lot of your articles that you've written online. They're really great. And then I would say, well, that's wonderful. What is it that you liked about what I said? And what is it that you think about this topic? So now we're engaging at a level that we may never have had an opportunity to talk about before. And then I'm also meeting a lot of people that aren't in my geographic area, who I've just become, you know, connected to. And it's more than just we're LinkedIn connected, but we're actually now talking to each other, having conversations, sharing ideas. And you just sort of feel like you really do have this engaged network of people that, you know, you've gotten to know just through the process of exchanging ideas. So when we talk about this whole idea of the digital transformation of you, it's really taking, you know, your ideas, your attitudes, your perspectives, your insights, and literally putting them in a digital form, because now you're taking, you know, just what's going on in your mind, in your heart, and some, you know, perhaps you might express verbally, you know, in an analog way, but now you have the opportunity to, you know, get it further out so that more people can engage with you on the topic. that's, I think, the whole point here, right? Is you're really presenting yourself in a medium that allows you to engage with a lot more people. Let me
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
ask you one question, because I know you are a fan of Twitter.
Yes.
And so when you talk about, really trying to crystallize an idea, and I love your point about, you have to take your ideas and work through them and get them in a form that you can actually articulate. It makes you becoming a better writer, makes you a better thinker, makes you a better communicator overall. How do you do that in a 140 character, sentence? The people that are really great at, using Twitter, I think, are the people that can really nail a thought, right, in a way that is impactful and powerful.
Yes.
How do you approach Twitter?
So it's amazing, and I love when people do that. I can't do that, but it doesn't stop me from trying. But I love. I mean, some of the best stuff is on Twitter. These quips. There's all these big issues going on in the world, whatever the thing is, and I admire so much the people who can nail it in 140 characters or less. But a couple things about Twitter. One is, like, we can baby step. First thing I tell people to do is go to search.twitter.com on a web page. You don't have to set up an account. You don't have to do anything. And just start poking in. You're interested in digital transformation or data analytics or CB radio or beer brewing, whatever you're in. Type it in and start to check out what the conversations that are going on there. It can be a little bit of an intimidating platform to get acclimated to, but you want to start listening first, right? So your first challenge is to set up an account, and then you got to figure out, well, how does this thing work? Nothing's happening. I got to figure out who to follow. That's why I like to send people to the search page first, so you can get used to kind of what's out there to some extent. But you could follow me, you could follow Kim, find a few friends that are on there, and just start in a listening mode. So, I think it's a high bar to be the 140 character, person who can crystallize some brilliant idea. I enjoy reading them. It's hard to do. But it is fun and rewarding to participate from a couple of different perspectives. One is it's a level of, like, meta curation that has changed the way I consume information. I don't read a lot of stuff in traditional forms, and, like, watching the evening news is just unsatisfying in many ways. It's like this 7-minute loop that just keeps going around and around. So to get information that's curated by following people who are interesting and we're brought together by certain, or I'm attracted to them by certain ideas or whatever, they might flip stuff from New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever, but I'm not going to read the whole Wall Street Journal. I'm finding out, oh geez, Kim, who's into digital transformation, put this article out there, helps bring it to my attention and curate that experience. So over time, what I've done is big fan of sort of taking in information on Twitter. So that's one thing I want to emphasize with people. It's a great place to get started, and it can be super valuable. So I follow you. I follow somebody who's interested in cycling. I follow somebody who, I follow my organization. I follow things in my industry. You get this just great cross section, and I'm not getting streams of things from media sites. I'm getting things that you and others felt compelled enough to share, retweet, for whatever reason. So, and some people that are putting out original content. So if you do create a blog post, why not tweet it out rather, or retweet things that are funny. So it's really, you could take the same model you talked about before, go on, get a profile, start liking some things, start retweeting and sharing some things, and then so you could take that same model on that platform, and they're all very different and unique in their own way. So. We talk about the obvious ones. Well, everybody's on Facebook now, and that sort of has its place. Twitter's a great, unique platform, not only because of 140 characters, but because it's public, right? We don't agree to be friends. If you're out there, I can just follow you, and that's kind of how it works. It's a great environment to dive into. So for 4 years, I taught internet marketing fundamentals at Bentley University and Northeastern University. And I took a very hands-on approach to that. And it was amazing to take people from never having been on Twitter to challenge them to go out and get, this week's assignment is to go out and get 50 followers, and so dive in, set up, figure out who to listen to, what's the topic you're going to be interested in, tweet out your blog post that I made you write, and figure out you know, how do those hashtags work, and how do I at reply somebody? And there's just, you know, Twitter is beautiful because it's simple, but there are some unique things to sort of figure out. And it's, you know, you can read an article about that, but why not go out and do it? This is free, cheap, and easy, right? Those of us in the technology space, sometimes we've spent a lot of money buying a, you know, a simulated Cisco router, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, getting an open source database so that we can set it up and figure out, you know, how to work with that. The stuff I'm talking about is just way easier and cheap and free. And yes, it's a little bit weird and different, but why not take the leap and go check it out? The model, using the model you suggested. I love Rachel's thing of, you know, start, you know, listening and liking, sharing, and then creating content.
So somebody just asked a question, Tom, online, and, you know, please guys, keep these questions coming. So how do those hashtags work?
So the hashtag, so a lot of Twitter was very organic and democratic when it grew up, and users started that model of hashtag as a way to sort of try and thread things together. Because what happens on Twitter is, you know, the conversations were not designed really to be linked. And so people started to find a way to link them, because you did always have the search capability. So if I put hashtag DT Friday or whatever, if we had a hashtag for this event, you could put it and it would be searchable. But what Twitter ultimately enhanced the product to make that a clickable link. And so I'm at a conference right now. The hashtag is MW17. So when I'm going around to different things, I can find out, and I found out that, you know, the people were at a karaoke bar last night. So like a self-organizing thing, MW17 are the people at this conference. Here's what's going on. Come down to this session. Twitter makes it very easy to click on that as a link, or go into search and type in MW17, and you could find out stuff you wouldn't know unless you happen to be sitting at dinner with the people who were like, yeah, a bunch of us are going to the karaoke bar. So it's an open kind of sharing public forum, and the hashtags are used a lot at conferences and things like this to tie those conversations and those dynamic communities together. Because just like everything else in digital transformation, it's not top-down, hierarchical, centrally organized anymore. You need to have these facilities for self-organizing, and it's a little bit sort of fluid and in flux, but it's also very dynamic and exciting. And so, you know, it's far from perfect. And that's, I think, maybe another thing for those of us in the IT field to get used to, right? So I know I have that challenge. I always want everything to be perfect and very tightly buttoned down and all done before we move forward. And the other foray into this realm for me has helped me relax a little bit on that front, and start to embrace and understand better about how things can be more dynamic. And we're really, again, back to connecting around ideas and finding people with shared interests, and using things like hashtags to do that.
Right. So somebody just made a point here online to say, going back to your earlier point about bringing it back to the physical, you know, world that you work in, that oftentimes what these platforms allow you to do is, because you have a way to present your ideas in this very open public forum, you have the opportunity to share thoughts that you might not necessarily talk about in the workplace. But people get to see a side of you, right? They get to see who you really are, how you really think.
And so do you.
What kind of person you really are, right? Because oftentimes in our workplaces, particularly if we're in these hierarchical organizations, there's so much separation between leadership and everybody else. And it's great to have a place for people to see that, you know, I'm a real person. Actually, I have real ideas and I haven't figured it all out, but this is what I think. So that, I think that was a great comment about.
Yeah. So you're the CEO of your own media company. You can do literally whatever you want, and that can be daunting, but it's also very freeing. And that's when we talk about personal leadership, the analogous model would be the CEO of yourself. So you're going to have, you know, what's my vision? What's my strategy? How am I going to execute against that for Tom Catalini, the person, and push myself forward? Same thing on the social media front. You really have your own media company, and you can do whatever you want. You can decide that you want to be on YouTube. We're gonna, you know, you're recording this, and we're gonna put it up on YouTube. What a great way to connect. Twitter maybe is the right platform, or maybe you want to set up a blog, or maybe all or some combination of that. And once you get into that, it's also amazing the great thought leaders who embrace this readily, right? So I went through a little phase where I'm like, I'm going to go to some of my heroes and ask them, can I interview you to find out, what Daniel Pink, many time mega New York Times bestseller, one of the, it's like one of the top 50 business thinkers of our time. I said, hey, Dan, I heard about your new book coming out, To Sell is Human. Could you do an interview with me? I'm going to put it up on YouTube. And I want to talk specifically about how the ideas in your book relate to CIOs and IT leaders. He says, sure. So I get Dan Pink for 35, 40 minutes, whatever it was. And he was totally game to do that because he understands and embraces this. And we're connecting around the idea and being willing to put it out there on, my little media company. And I don't have a big platform and I didn't have a lot of people. For him, he didn't even ask about any of those numbers because folks like that, the progressive thinkers of our time, the folks that are on the front edge of this, that are helping us push us all forward, readily embrace that. And so to the extent you're willing to do that, I mean, you're doing it right now, you're doing it every month, right? And so now you're connecting with people, bringing them in, and we're all benefiting from it. And so I think everybody can embrace that to the level that they're comfortable. And maybe they're not a video person. Podcasting, my God, I can't stop listening to podcasts. I actually took a 2-week hiatus not too long ago where I deleted the app off my phone because I was, but there's another realm. Maybe you want to be a podcaster. Maybe you like audio, maybe you like video, maybe you like the written word, maybe you like short and snippy on Twitter, but you will learn so much. People will learn about you. And I was sort of trying to shout out when you were speaking a little bit, you will also learn about yourself. That's what's happened for me. Again, I'm back to like, well, who am I? Why should anybody care? What do I want to say? What do I want to think about? If I could do anything, what would I do? And I just stumble on to all different sorts of things, including, convincing some of my hero authors, Seth Godin, Dan Pink, Nilofer Merchant, to come on and talk about whatever I want for half an hour. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, so you've written a couple of books. You've gone from being a prolific blogger to actually taking your ideas and getting them published in a book. Tell us about some of your books.
Yeah, great. So the first one's all about cycling. I told you I got my start in this realm in a different domain, and I still love cycling and use it as a foundation for a lot of the lessons I teach in personal leadership. So I did that in the traditional way, and then I started blogging and writing, and it's in a way what I think you can find as you go through this self-exploration of personal leadership and figuring out you can do whatever you want, so therefore what do you want to do? It's funny how many of us will go back to what we were interested in as kids. And I had always been interested in kind of writing and ideas and things like that. So when I got into blogging, then eventually decided to take that to the next level, and I started writing some books and figuring out how to publish those, and you get a whole look at that technology, that industry, and all of that. And then how do I take what I've been doing in blogging to the next level and make it more long form content? So I've written a couple of books about IT leadership and communication. They're up on Amazon. This is my latest book here, Career Leap Year, and this is all about personal leadership, and it has to do with a lot of the things we're talking about today, right? So how do I start to understand that I've got some opportunities that I can create for myself? How do I kind of embrace that mindset, and how do I work on specific skills over time, whether it's communication, speaking, leadership skills, team building skills. And I organized it into 52 chapters, thinking, take one idea a week and test it out. So it's very short, kind of bite-sized things, because what I've learned out of all of this is, and I think we all know at one level or another, big things happen only because we chip away at little things consistently over time. That's how it all happens, right? There is really no other way. There is no such thing as an overnight success. An overnight success takes 5, 6, 7 years to develop. If you look into anybody who is a leader or a success at any level, it's because they've done work consistently over time. Nobody's kind of won the lottery. We're all, you go in a store and you look at the magazine covers or, on a website or whatever, and that's the promise. It hooks us in. But you know what? In 6 weeks from now, I'm not going to have rock hard abs. That isn't how it works. And we know that, and I think we just have to be okay with that. We have to forgive ourselves that, you know what? I'm not going to go from 0 to 60 here overnight. But what I can do is just take little baby steps, a little bit at a time, chip away at it. So I'm hoping that folks listening today, something in here caught your interest. Maybe I'll go check out YouTube and I'm going to subscribe to a channel. I want to, like, everybody talks about vlogging. What's this vlogging video like? Let me just follow somebody and see what happens. I like that one. I'm going to keep following. Or I didn't like that. I'm going to find somebody else. Or I tried 10 of them and I'm not going to. Even if you're at that first level and you want to go onto Twitter or any of these other places and just kind of start getting acclimated, you know, you're going to look back in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and that's when you'll see the progress. Oh, you know what? Over the last 6 months, I have an opinion on YouTube because I followed 15 different vloggers and I only found this one I liked. And I like this one because of the way that she edited this or used the music or whatever, had this perspective. I mean, I have a totally different eye for this now than I did before. I was just in a session where they were critiquing, you know, video put out by major institutions. And it's like, wow, that took like 10 months for teams of people to create this thing. And I'm kind of like, geez, I was not really as great as the amazing stuff I've seen this vlogger create who literally does it overnight every day. And so what, you know, so then you can start to think about, well, what makes video work or not work for me, for the subject? What is it about the storytelling? What is it about the technique? What is it about the content? So again, even voyeuristically, you can move yourself forward tremendously. So now when you are, again, talking about going back to the office, back to work, and you're increasingly in more conversations about digital transformation, you will be better informed because you personally got involved and checked this out at some level. And you don't have to start out by creating your own weekly podcast show. You can simply start in, you know, by watching some of these things, and maybe you will find some places to stick your toe in and do it slowly over time.
Well, and I think it's also a great avenue to explore your own creativity, right? And in my mind, you know, video is a great, you know, venue for that too, because you can bring in so many of these other elements of, you know, music and imagery, you know. And so what is it that you want to say in a very creative way? You know, how do you stage something that really gets a message across in a very creative way? So another, I think, real positive benefit of this whole process of using digital medium as a way to express yourself is you can really express your own creativity, which, you know, for many of us, it's hard to tap into that. You know, I mean, we are creative, but we don't always tap into it if we're not, you know, necessarily oriented around art or, you know, but we are creative. I mean, we're creative beings. That's what makes us human. And so it really provides a way to kind of tap into not only what do I think, but what's creative about that? What is that new idea that I have that I can present in a way that is unique and is a unique expression of me and how I see the world, right? I mean, we're all unique, you know, all of us have this unique mix of 23 chromosomes. So how does that all kind of come together and present itself in a way that's creative? And I don't think we spend enough time thinking about that, because we tend to think digital transformation is computers. Well, it's not. It's you. You know, it's
right.
The medium.
Right. And you can actually bring that down to a very practical level, right? So everybody's got information overload, too much coming at them all the time. So you talk about creating and using the creative content. Part of it is like, how do I get and keep somebody's attention? So if you start blogging, you find out that where the title matters. You know, if you don't have a good title, you're not going to draw somebody into the piece. If the first sentence doesn't capture them, you're not going to get them into the first paragraph. So you start to understand and think like a journalist, and how do you, you know, not bury the lead, as they say, right? So a lot of times, you know, those of us who have had success in business in the past can have an idea that we need to sort of lay the groundwork and build a case, and then we're going to hit you with this great punchline at the end, and you're going to buy our thing or accept our proposal or whatever, when in this information overload age, it works exactly the opposite. I got to get you at the title so that I can get you into this and bring you through that. So you could think that as direct analogy to your email subject line, right? So you're trying to send a message out to many people in the company or to a committee or a team. So the way that you create the subject of the email, the way that you structure that message, so very simple, mundane things. You talk about kind of creativity. You can find very practical applications. And what I have found, they've become fun, sort of interesting problems to solve. Because it's like, how should I do that? How should I organize that? What could I try? And again, you're embracing this baby steps kind of experimental mode. So you're gonna, maybe you're running a project team and you're sending out weekly emails. So you're gonna try some techniques over time and sort of figure that out.
And again, it makes you a better communicator overall. Again, as you're talking, I'm thinking about what are those ways that we really try to get like the attention of our teenager, right?
Sure.
What is that one thing I could say that would get your attention, that would really kind of grab your attention and help you realize that, okay, let's really sit down and have a conversation about this. And we go through that all the time. There's so many missed opportunities, right? So many missed opportunities to effectively communicate. And so going through this process really in many ways is an exercise in honing your communication skills and your ability to drive a point.
Yeah, and you mentioned teenagers, so I got to mention Snapchat. So the other thing is to just start playing around with all these different platforms. And I'm sure I'm behind, but I'm into Snapchat now, and I only have a dozen connections on that. But it is one way to connect with the kids and to figure out, and it's something where they can mentor me. So that the technology is a great way to exchange ideas, and even exploring the platform itself, the kids can help me understand and use it. And those of us who aren't familiar with it should check out Snapchat, because you can get on here and you find out, like, this interface, I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And you can understand a lot about current thinking and design of things that aren't burdened by legacy technology. How do people design apps and things these days? And it's not drop-down menus, and it's not like that whole linear hierarchical thinking that we're used to. The interfaces aren't always perfect. They're always great. I'm like, it should be a little bit more intuitive, but just the way that platforms like Snapchat work, and then the way to connect, and then what's the decorum on these different platforms is always, I find it an interesting thing. So on Snapchat, it's very throwaway, very informal, very humorous way to connect with people. And I have a blast doing that with, again, just a few people, including my kids when they don't block me. But to get into that, and the decorum on Twitter, we talked about a little bit, it's totally different. On Facebook, make your life look fabulous. That seems to be the what you're supposed to do on Facebook. Everything's fantastic all the time, and don't say anything political, because that doesn't lead any place good. LinkedIn, professional environment, has its own decorum. So it's great to go and explore all of these and find out what's going on, and find out from teenagers what's the latest thing, what's going on. It's a way to connect and open up communication that. Again, so like that physical kind of dinner table thing where, we're into that, we do that, but it is also fun. I'm in Cleveland, I'm out of town, and I'm sat chatting with the kids. And we talked again about other benefits of kind of writing and getting into that. I'm so thrilled when the kids ask me to help when they're trying to write an essay for something or something like that. And so we're sharing Google Docs, and we're using all that platform to do those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think it is interesting to, again, I'm playing off kind of the word teenager, and you think about kind of new people who are coming up and are, born digital, and the world is the way it is since they've been here, and how do they see it, and what can we learn from them is just always a fascinating area of discovery for me.
I would agree with that 100%. So I see a question here. Maybe thinking about your book a little bit, I don't know. Have you ever been able to utilize your social media presence to help you get a job? Or how does that really work?
Yeah, so it played a big role in coming over to the Museum of Fine Arts. So I was recruited out, I don't know, about 5 years ago. And I had been blogging for quite some time at that point, and I was teaching marketing at Bentley University. But I put a lot of content out there. And when you get a position like, like the one I have at the MFA, and there's usually like a hiring committee and a bunch of people, and just for the fact that you're in this day and age, people are Googling you, right? So you have a chance now to have a great deal of influence over what they find. So Google's going to throw up your LinkedIn profile pretty high. That's nice. Everybody has a LinkedIn profile. What are you sharing on that platform? Twitter, blog, my blog is called tomcatalini.com. So if you Google Tom Catalini, it's going to show up there and you're going to find those things. So just like we talked about kind of from a professional networking point of view, people have a chance to get to know you better. In a hiring situation, that comes into play. Absolutely, people are Googling you. Now, that's where I think it's critical that whatever you put out there, you need to be true to yourself, right? You're not going to sustain something if you're not interested and passionate about it. So as long as you follow your interests and you're true to yourself, there's no harm in putting that out there. And what I decided, long ago and say like an interview situation is that I don't want to be a square peg fitting into a round hole. So I don't want to pretend that I'm something I'm not. So I'm comfortable with the stuff I was putting out there. Is very consistent with the kinds of opportunities I might be open to in the places I want to go. But definitely throughout the hiring process, it came up. People did Google me, and I actually got a number of specific questions about, oh, you wrote this about team management. It would work a little bit differently here. What do you think? And so they're like, wow, they already like kind of know me. Like my reputation preceded me for better or for worse, right? Preceded me before I get there. And I see that as a tremendous advantage. I was just speaking to a SIM group on member career development. I think it was last week. I did a webinar for them, and we talked about just that, about going from, having an online profile being nice, but insufficient, to becoming a content creator. And I think if you do it true to yourself, it's nothing but an upside to it.
Yeah, again, I would agree with that. And I think that it also helps you, oftentimes when we go into an interview situation, we often don't even think a lot about, well, what would we say? Kind of going back to your original point, who am I? What do I have to say? What's my position on some of this stuff? If I get asked this question, what am I going to say? So, just by exploring your own ideas as you go, you've already kind of got a ready-made script about, this is who I am, this is what I think. And I've actually been working on these ideas for some time, and I've been thinking about these ideas for some time. And so it's a lot easier to convey your thoughts versus feeling like, yeah, I do have something to say about that, but I haven't really put it into words.
Right.
So I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback here. People are telling me that they really like this idea of thinking about baby steps and thinking about ways, kind of work people into a forum or a medium that would allow them to be more engaged and engage with others. So where do you think that, platforms like LinkedIn are heading? I mean, I see a lot of people on LinkedIn. I see a lot of people, using that medium. I think it's gotten a lot more popular. I see a lot of people posting articles. Do you think that LinkedIn is the medium of choice for a lot of people? Do you find a lot of presence there that would indicate that it's a great place to be and to start? I know we talked about Twitter, but what do you think about LinkedIn and that whole professional network thing?
Yeah, absolutely. The trend is towards content creation there, hands down. In just the last year or so, I've seen a tremendous uptick in people liking, commenting. All the lurkers are coming out of the woodworks now. So people I've known for many years, I've never seen them post or comment on anything. You're seeing engagement. It's definitely there. You're seeing people create content. It's definitely there. You're seeing things kind of go viral, or whatever you want to say, become popular or trendy on that platform. Keep in mind now also, LinkedIn just bought lynda.com, and they've got some great training modules. So if you want to get into publishing on training, you've now got a world-class training company that, we know LinkedIn was purchased by Microsoft, so they're going to be stable, we think, and well-financed for a while. But they also LinkedIn bought lynda.com, and you can go in, and if you're interested in publishing, you can get world-class training in the typical lynda.com fashion. And they're really, I think that change is going to cause an even stronger uptick in content creation on that platform. Now, one thing I will say is consider, please, creating and maintaining your own blog. At the end of the day, you don't own LinkedIn. You don't own Facebook. You don't own Twitter. What I taught in the marketing class, that's a platform for earned media, right? So you can take advantage of those platforms and those networks, but you don't own them. And I think there's a tremendous advantage to having, your own blog. First of all, I think for those of us in the tech space, it's interesting to go and work through the technical skills of setting it up and figuring it out, how it all works. But then it's your little place on the internet that you own and control. And there's nothing wrong with linking or cross-posting or doing something like that. So I write a blog every Sunday morning that goes out to my email list that I maintain. And I also put it on LinkedIn via a link. So I've gone through back and forth, and you can experiment with this, whether you want to put content on LinkedIn, put it in both places, link back and forth. Keep in mind, a blog you own forever.
Have you found it a challenge to maintain the blog or to manage the blog?
I found it was basically comes down to building a habit. And so now I've built a habit that would be very, very difficult to break, I think. So every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. on my email list, my weekly post goes out. And I would encourage people to join me there. Anybody who's listening wants to learn more about personal leadership, you can go to tomcatalini.com. Right there on the homepage is a chance to sign up for a 7-day free personal leadership challenge. That happens over email over the course of a week. And then I would roll you into my Sunday blog post. But I've committed to that. And that discipline has helped me tremendously, because come hell or high water, something's coming out from me Sunday morning, whether it's Christmas, New Year's Day, whatever. So I have to plan ahead and organize that, in the way that I do. But I found it much better to have built up the habit and made the commitment, and then just keep to it is actually simpler than letting myself off the hook and being a little bit more lax about it, which I've totally been through. I've gone from blogging periodically when I feel like it, experimenting with super long form content. I was blogging 3, 4, 5 times a week for a 6-month period. So I've kind of just experimented with it all. What happens to work for me at the end of the day is, once a week. Your your mileage will vary. What works for you might be totally different. But that's my thoughts on that.
2 quick questions, Tom, before we run out of time. Somebody asked, what are your thoughts on putting work samples in LinkedIn? Although this feature seems to have disappeared recently. So let's take that one first, and then we've got one last question. So work samples.
So I would take whatever it is that's compelling you to want to share that work sample. And I don't know if you're mentioning a specific feature, I'm not familiar with it, but I bet there's a kernel of an idea in there, that's some insight that is making you want to share that you could write about or share that component in a different way. Maybe, and if it's a feature that's gone away, this work sample thing, maybe that's another reason you put up on a blog, place that you control, and you could link over to it from LinkedIn.
Okay.
But you can link in SlideShare, YouTube, lots of things on LinkedIn these days.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And then the other question, when you're already on social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, how do you get people to interact more than just clicking like with your posts? So far, most of the time, even when asking a question, very few people put comments. How do you get people to give you feedback, get people to engage?
That is the $1 million question. And I think that is one worth asking yourself and experimenting with, which is simply what I've done. So last year we wanted to paint our house. And so the people I want to ask were in my community. I was going to put this on Facebook, and I'm like, well, how do I get a recommendation from people on Facebook? Because it's, I wanted to get their attention. I wanted to get good feedback. So I went out in front of my house, and I stood there, and I held up a selfie of me in sort of a questioning pose like this. And so I wanted that image to capture their attention. And I was like, who should I hire to paint my house? With this funny looking little image. And didn't I get 6 or 8 responses with very specific recommendations? So if I had put that out just in text, which I think I had tried, just what that person's talking about, those things can be ignored. And that's when you can get a feel for the decorum of a platform. So if your question got ignored, try it in a different format. Nobody says you can't put it out there again and again and again. And you could, how come nobody answered my question? You could put a photo, a video, or ask it repeatedly, rephrase it. That's part of a learning opportunity, I think.
That's great. All right, Tom. So we're going to go ahead and begin to wrap it up here. What I'm going to do is share my screen here again in a minute. Here I come. I want everybody to see this next upcoming webinar. You all may be very interested in this. This is Scott Foote, a very good friend of mine in cybersecurity, done a lot of work with the government and other financial services firms all across the country and around the world. He's the CEO now of an organization called Protinium. He's got a phenomenal set of products associated with risk intelligence, particularly in the cyber world. We're going to talk about leadership and risk intelligence. So what is risk intelligence? And how does it help leaders make better informed decisions by how you really understand and can get your arms around what risk really is? So that's going to be on May 9th, which is a Tuesday, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be our next web talk. I also want to give a big shout out again to my friends at Signature Consultants. They're awesome in terms of helping us get these webinars up and running and bringing a lot of people to join in on the conversation. And then I just want to leave you all with this final thought. And Tom, I know you live this every day. You promote this in your personal leadership blogs. And I thank you for being a part of today's event so much. I hope everybody goes to tomcatalini.com to see the blogs and participate, because leadership really is a daily decision. It's something that we have to do. And it's a way for us to really embark upon our own personal journeys in becoming amazing leaders. So thank you, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks with everybody. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Have a wonderful week. And we'll see you next time on our webinar. Out here.
All right.